Alright, before I get started, I need to do a little piece of housekeeping. You might notice that I'm talking like a British person. Again. Yes, it's been about 2.5 years since I had a British accent, but it's back. I don't know how long it's going to be here for. The good news is it gets me way more laid than barking. The bad news is that it's confusing to landlords and everybody I interact with. I say landlords right now because I'm trying to find an apartment. For those of you who don't know, I'm Winter Tashlin. And among other things, I have Tourette syndrome, which causes involuntary movements and sounds called tics. And one of the more unusual but very happening tics in my life at the moment is an unusual accent. This is relevant because our topic today is Dr. Alan Turing and his pending or not pending pardon by the British government. Hence why I have to mention the whole accent thing. Anyway. You're watching this on a computer right now. You might be a pedantic bastard and say, no, I'm not, I'm watching on a smartphone, which is still a computer, it's just a computer you can put in your pocket. Yay, the future. Since you're using a computer to watch this, it's important to thank Dr. Alan Turing. Those of you who don't know, Dr. Turing was a cryptanalyst and a computer scientist who was best known perhaps for helping develop the machine that cracked the Enigma code. So if you're not living under Nazism right now, also thank Dr. Turing. What's relevant to our conversation is that in addition to being a really spectacular geek, I suppose, and developing the machine that broke the Enigma and helping lay down the foundation for everything which is modern computing today, Dr. Turing was also gay, or as they said back then, a homosexual. In 1952, he was charged with the crime of homosexuality, which he pleaded guilty to on the advice of his lawyer. Yay, lawyers. He was given a choice. He could go to prison, or he could allow himself to be subjected to chemical castration, thinking that he could do more, science outside of prison. He chose chemical castration, which caused gynecomastia and a loss of libido, and probably fucked him up in some other ways. He later died of cyanide poisoning. It's widely considered to be a suicide, a la Snow White, in the form of eating a poison apple, but there's also some evidence that it could have been an accident. Regardless, Alan Turing, computer scientist, helped save us from Nazis, broke the Enigma code, is responsible for the device that you're using right now in some grandparenty sort of way, tried on the charge of homosexuality, pled guilty, chemical castration, death. That brings us to where we are now. In 2009, the British government issued a formal apology to Dr. Turing for the whole, hey, you're gay, so we're going to chemically castrate you thing. An apology that was way too long coming, in my opinion, I want to note. But now, there's a discussion about pardoning Dr. Turing. And I recently wrote a post for the Bellerico Project in which I strongly argue against pardoning Dr. Turing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Mostly because I think it's a load of crap. Dr. Turing was a homosexual who was convicted of homosexuality, or rather pled guilty to homosexuality, and was punished for homosexuality. You can't pardon him for being gay when he was gay. That doesn't make a great deal of sense. Unless the British government is going to pardon everybody who has ever tried for being gay, which isn't what's on the table right now. Dr. Turing is perhaps one of the most important martyrs of the LGBT community. And I don't use the word martyr lightly. It's a big, loaded word in our culture, and that's why I think it's the right one for him. This is someone who was a hero. I mean, King George IV issued an Order of the Officer of the British Empire, an OBE, basically sort of not quite knighted him for his service during the war, while his wartime activities were still classified because, it was a war. And it was all super secret and stuff, and now they were the commies to worry about. And yet, he was punished for being gay. By today's standards, trying someone for being gay, taking away their security clearance and hence a lot of their career, chemically castrating them, making them a social pariah, etc., 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 seems rather icky. And it's not what we like to think of as the sort of thing that happens in the Western world. We like to think it doesn't happen anyway, but the reality is that, and far worse, still does. But within the Western world, we like to think of that as the sort of thing that doesn't happen. But it did. The British government, and British culture by extension, doesn't get a footnote after Alan Turing, great man, kind of sucks what happened to him, but hey, it's all right now. We said sorry. And legally, it never happened at all. They don't get to change things. They don't get to go back and say, oops, our bad, we'll just wipe that out. Because that's not about Dr. Turing, and that's not about other gay people who suffered similarly. That's about making 2013, let's be honest, mostly straight people, feel better about themselves. See, maybe we did some bad shit in the past, but we're wiping it out. A lot of people in the LGBT community, at least if the comments on my recent post are an indication, strongly support pardoning Dr. Turing and see it as a way to close a painful chapter in history. And I'm all about closing painful chapters. I think that the Prime Minister's apology in 2009 was incredibly overdue and exactly what we needed. That's an apology. That says, hey, this thing, it happened. It was really shit. And we're really sorry about that. We shouldn't have done that. A pardon is a way of saying, well, we sort of didn't do that. I mean, we've undone it. An apology. Apology? I'm sorry. Pardon? Well, we undid it. Unless you're going to bring Dr. Turing back from the grave, you didn't undo it, so you don't pardon him. Unless it's going to be part, as I said, of a sweeping pardon that changes everybody who is gay's convictions. Because you know what? There are still people alive suffering under the stigma of having been convicted of homosexuality. And the British government, to their credit, has been making some steps to try to address that injustice. Perhaps not the steps that we would all like, but there are definitely steps being made. But Dr. Turing, he's dead. Dead, 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 dead. That sucks. A lot. But it happened. A pardon's not going to bring him back from the grave, so leave it an apology, which he deserved. Plus, historical side note, Dr. Turing never felt ashamed about being gay and didn't feel that homosexuality was something he should apologise for. If you pardon him for the crime of homosexuality, you're saying he wasn't really guilty of this crime. And you know what? He was. He was one of us. That's the way it is. It sucks that your laws were in opposition to who we are. That wasn't fair. But he was one of us. And that conviction, that says he was gay. A pardon says, well, he didn't really do it. And he did. And he was alright with that. And we should be too. Thanks.